A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Spectrum. We are coming to you live on Radio 1 FM 90, broadcasting from the Central Building here in the heart of our city, Kampala. Live on our website, www.radio1fm90.com. You click on the icon with the word Listen Live. Now, you can get this radio station also via the different radio listening apps, which you can obtain from the App Store of your smartphone. You download any, look for Radio 1 FM 90, and as long as you have an internet connection, you should be able to listen to us from anywhere across this globe. We also give you another opportunity via your TV set. That's if you have a DSTV connection, you simply look for audio channel 897. My name is Kenneth Anderson Lukwago, your host, and today we'll be looking at the state of political parties in Uganda. Do they provide the leadership that we deserve? Now, as of today, there are 26 registered political parties in Uganda, as according to the Electoral Commission website. All these parties now claim to have different ideologies and missions, but the main aim is to better Uganda. Some people have argued that our political parties, save for a few, are fractured and built around individuals without which they would crumble. Others have argued that the political environment does not allow the growth of multi-party politics, and hence political parties are bound to suffer. Some parties have been born out of conflicts. For instance, the FDC party has given birth to several: Uganda Federal Alliance, Alliance for National Transformation, and very soon we might have another political parties, the People's Front for Liberation. The Electoral Commission is supposed to actually give them a certificate this week because according to them, there is no objection to their registration following the gazettement, which was done 2 weeks running. Now, the newest political party we have on the block is the Democratic Front, born out of a merger of political parties, but also a conflict in the National Unity Platform Party. Today we'll be looking deeper at what these political parties actually stand for and whether they are providing us the credible leadership we actually need to take this country forward. I have two guests. The Honorable Ambassador James Kinobe, member of the NRM Electoral Commission. He's a former MP and a minister in this country. Good evening, sir. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Spectrum.
Yeah, good evening, Comrade Kenneth. And I want to greet you all our listeners, and thank you for inviting us.
You need to be a little bit clear. When you use that word comrade, some people start thinking about other things.
Like? You're a comrade in arms?
This man, all along, the host of Spectrum is a member of the NRM. Well, comrade.
I used to say Ndugu. Is it okay? Thank you, Ndugu Kenneth. I can't say Mr. because with Kenneth, I didn't want to have it plain as Kenneth. So Ndugu Kenneth, and I want to thank our listeners who are tuned in now. Thank you for being with us at this time.
All right, we expect our second guest, the Honorable James Akena, President of
Another
the
James,
People's Congress. Yeah, it's a day for the
day for the Jameses.
James.
I hope he's also born in June.
Yeah, President of the Uganda People's Congress and Lira City East MP. This man has decided to run for president. This coming election, we'll be hearing from him, and you might have heard from the news. His political party, the political party that he leads, is actually embarking on an exercise targeting that particular election. As we wait for Honorable Jimmy Akena to come in, let's begin with you. A quick brief. Plot 10 Chadondo Road has been a beehive of activity. What exactly has been going on, Ambassador Chinobe?
Yeah, let me first correct that one. Plot 10 is the National Secretariat, and the Electoral Commission is Plot 13.
Oh.
Yeah, Plot 13 is the National Electoral but we're both on Chadondo Road.
So you have two different offices. The Electoral Commission is separate from the...
Absolutely. The Plot 10 is the headquarters of the party, and the Electoral Commission is the headquarters of the commission.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I just give an update to our people, because those who have been following us from 6th May, when we started with the structures at the village level, we had elections in the 72,000 villages of the country, electing 30 leaders at each of those levels. And as we speak today, last week, 23rd, we culminated at the district level, setting up of structures. Starting by Monday, by 2nd, we're now on another level of the actual players, the candidates themselves. Right from the lowest levels, we started with the SIGs, special interest groups at the villages, where we have the PWDs, the elderly persons, and the youth. As we speak now, we have at least a candidate in every village of this country as a flag bearer for that level of our special interest groups. Second June, we started on expression of interest among those who want to contest at parliamentary level. And if you will allow, I give you an update as of today. Uganda is divided into 18 sub-regions, NRM sub-regions, where you have Karamoja, Acholi, Lango, West Nile, Teso, Sebei, Bugishu, Bukedi, Busoga, Greater Mukono, Greater Luero, Greater Kampala, Greater Masaka, Greater Mubende, Ankole, Chigezi, Rwenzori, and Bunyoro. Now, these areas have returned people who are vying and expressing interest to contest in the primaries. So far we have 296 constituency members of parliament. We have 132 women members of parliament. We have 80 LC5 candidates. And then the total of those at that level is 508. Now we have also other, this is now for today. So cumulatively, we have registered interest from 1,303 candidates at different levels. Some are SIGs, like the disabilities, those with the youth, and so on. And it is just our second day. We still proceeding with this exercise up to 15th of June, and after 15th June on 17th we shall have nominations. What we do today, you come with your payment, commitment payment of 3 million shillings for the MPs and the 1M. For
Cash?
Cash. No, not cash. We want bank slips. We don't bring cash. We don't want to touch money. We provided all intending candidates with bank details, and there's also a Momo number. You pay, but
commitment fee.
You come. It's a nomination fee. We call it a nomination fee.
Okay.
For us at the secretariat, we only need you to come with a proof of payment. You go through the formalities of putting down your details, and at the end of the exercise, you are given a file that has got a list of the nominators who will be nominating you, and of course guidelines which you follow. And then on the 17th, we are going to have nominations of all those candidates. Then for the levels below MP, the nominations are going on within the same range of the days at the respective district headquarters, councillors at all different levels and up to the district. At the district, we only picked the members of parliament. I mean, there are 5 chairpersons who are coming at the headquarters of the party. Even nominations will follow the same arrangement. Nominations will be done at respective district levels, and the MPs will be nominated at the Electoral Commission. To us, every candidate is a candidate, irrespective of your status. But it's worth noting that the other day on the 2nd when we started, the pace was set by His Excellency the Vice President, who nominated first. Later on, we go to the Right Honourable Speaker, the Right Honourable Deputy Speaker, several other ministers and members of parliament, and we climaxed with the Right Honourable Prime Minister at around 5. That was day 1. And today I've already given you the summary of today. So today we have got 508 candidates, aspiring candidates, and on the second one, 795. So that is the situation as it is now. Then another maybe small update is that by yesterday, we have almost completed 95% of the district elections. We have some few districts where I have issues that have hindered us from completing the district elections, like Zimbabwe, Molata, Lira, and a few others. And we believe that by end of next week, we should be having all the district leadership constituted. Because in August, we shall be going into constituting the National Delegates Conference, which is an electoral college that chooses our national leaders, the president and others. Then we also have national leagues, which also give us leadership of the respective leagues, plus the candidates who contest in the national elections.
All right. Now, let's tackle the topic that brought us here. We have political parties in this country. Like you had, I said there are 26 NRM is one of them. I don't know whether it is NRM or NRM what. Sometimes we are told the NRM is not a political party, it's an organization. We don't know exactly what NRM is. Maybe you can help us to understand from the registration what is at the Electoral Commission. But we are looking at the state of political parties in our country. What would you say, Honorable Chinobe?
We, as NRM, we registered ourselves as an NRM party, but because the law that regulates all those parties, called the Political Parties and Organizations Act, some are organizations, some others are parties, but I think the nomenclature and the wording is not really an issue, only that we are now in institutional politics, and leaders vying for leadership form themselves into groups, though others are still allowed to contest as independents. Now, the challenge I think we've had is that parties in Uganda had a false start, because when you go back to the 60s, we didn't last long. Shortly after, we had a military dictatorship, which took us too long. When we came out of the bush, we had our first few years to restore the constitutional order and have a new constitution. Then had 10 years of the individual merit politics. And apparently it appears we still have some hangover in the individual merit politics, because even within parties, you find that very powerful individuals influence the direction of what happens in their respective parties. For example, if you have a very strong and popular member of parliament, you're very sure that as an NRM you have an asset you can rely on. To the contrary, if you have a weak leader or you have a divided membership, then definitely that affects the performance of that particular party in the areas. Now, the second challenge, I think, is that I think political offices have become so juicy, because you'll find that the original intention, which would have brought us to where maybe some other countries like America, where they have 2 to 3 known parties, there you are, you have 26. And the motivation put in the constitution that every party that has got a member of parliament joins IPOD and also gets funded by maybe by the taxpayers' money. These could be some of the factors that are maybe fueling each of the groups to set up parties. But we still believe it's very healthy. Along the way, maybe these would be building blocks of democratic institutions, because in a very viable setup, the understanding would be that a government in power and those or that group strongly opposing it is also a government in waiting. So apparently with the time, I think, either through alliances or either through maybe some few parties picking up the pace of the mighty party. Otherwise, as we speak now, there's one mighty party which is in the lead, and the rest are vying for number 2. There's a very lucrative position now. Leader of opposition is a very big post. You have a very big convoy, you control budget, you have a lot of powers, you have a say. So I think the major competition now is between who leads the opposition and, of course, who takes the state power.
All right. Our second guest has joined us, and that's none other than the Honorable Jimmy Akena, President of the Uganda People's Congress. He's also a Member of Parliament for Lira City East constituency. Thank you so much for joining us, Honorable Jimmy Akena.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on.
What's happening in the Uganda People's Congress? I gave Honorable Chinobe an opportunity to tell us what is happening in the NRM. We are preparing for elections. What's happening?
We are also preparing for elections. We're now processes. We are finalizing on the online register. We'll be doing verification soon, and then we'll be going into structural processes as we head towards the general election.
Do you have time on your side, Honorable Akena? One would say you have started a little bit late.
No. We have started much earlier. It is now completion, because also you don't want to finish way too soon, and then you have a long gap before you go into the process. So we're going into this process where we're going to be doing the structure, we're going to be doing the primaries as and when the nomination is going on. Special interest groups were already, of course, in that process. But yeah, we're on track. It's a little bit, because also if you look at EC have revised their roadmap, I think 3-4 times. They've adjusted from time to time. So we also work within their time frame and also adjusting ours. But of course, we know election is in January, and we'll be ready by January.
All right. UPC, one of the oldest political parties in our country. Today we are discussing the state of political parties in our country and whether they are actually giving us the leadership that we deserve as a country. You heard from Honorable Jimmy Akena, who actually says you've been relegated, competing for the second position. They are the mighty party.
Don't be surprised, I'm another James. Sorry, I'm also James.
Let's look at the reality on the ground. Why do we have these kinds of political parties in our country?
No, you see, I think here we're not being honest with ourselves. First of all, the grassroots democracy, which was supposedly brought by NRM, one, did not cater for parties. It was really designed to undermine the parties and to create something in its place. The reality of it is that we have postponed our LC1 elections, I think 4 times. In that it's the issue of lack of funds. Now, all the political parties are supposed to mirror that whole structure from village all the way up. Now, if the whole government of Uganda cannot afford to run the LC1 elections, how are we as political parties supposed to be able to handle? So we have created something in the name of creating a democracy which is not workable. We have failed to work it, and we have created burdens on other political players. Reality is NRM is not a party per se. In my own assessment, NRM is not a party per se. It is a state-funded thing. I don't even want to know what I'll describe it, but should you separate NRM from the state or from its chair? I don't see NRM really continuing to exist. Because even where they talk about its ideological opinions and whatever, it just depends when it is that they're going to talk about it. Because what was said maybe 3 years ago is not what they're going to be saying today, and they will keep adjusting.
What's your basis for that analysis, Honorable Akena?
For me, it's reality, and I'm dealing with this reality. You have a state-funded outfit which has been running the state. That is how. Initially, under the Movement Act, they made themselves part of the government.
The single party.
The single party, but state-funded party. State-funded party. Now, that is not tenable. In the sense how it was, it is no longer tenable. And some of the attempts which have been done in the name of maybe inclusivity, I'm on record on what transpired in Parliament surrounding the funding of political parties on taxpayer funds. I am strongly against what was done in the name of iPod, because we were not involved as iPod. So I do not want to own it as iPod. This is something which was done. I don't know who did it, why it was done, how it was done, and I'm on record that I am against it, against how it was done, and I'll wait for them in iPod to see how they can justify what they did.
What exactly did they do that you think curtails political parties on Lubaken?
No. We had a formula which was to strengthen political parties. I championed that, and that is how we were able to handle things in iPod, where we were able to handle the summit. We talked about how do we have strong, viable political parties which will be there to help in case of anything, to strengthen the democracy, but in case of anything, you need strong, viable political parties. That is what I pushed for. We continued with Mao, and we got an agreement, and we got a formula on how we're supposed to handle the public funds in a way whereby it will help strengthen the parties. It was not done. In 2020, I moved the committee at that time was being headed by Oboth, now Minister of Defense. I went to that committee, made a presentation from iPod on what we agreed. It was totally ignored. That is now which has been brought back. But they have put some criteria which I don't even know how it's going to be measured. They've put something like tolerance. If you're not tolerant, you will not be able to access funds. But how do you measure tolerance in this context? You know, it's not one of those things which you can easily measure. So what has been put has been the timing of it brought in after the budget. But there were no work plans from Electoral Commission to cover the arrangements during this election year. They've now brought new arrangements after the budget has been, passed. How is it supposed to be implemented where you've changed this whole funding arrangement? So it was not brought in good faith. Let me put it that way, it was not brought in good faith. And we are going to, at least on my side, I'm going to follow up until we get to the bottom of who brought it and why in this form.
But from what I'm hearing, you seem to suggest that the ruling party, the NRM, is doing its best to frustrate the growth of other political parties. Is that what you're trying to say, even including through the funding aspect?
Yes, definitely. That is clear as day and night, because the ruling party, how often do they hold meetings? Apart from SEC meetings, which you hear from time to time, what other organs do you hear meeting of the ruling party? You only see them meeting when it's coming towards elections, where they're doing the final endorsements, and then they go into abeyance thereafter. And that is not what we envisage. We envisage that we should be able to have National Council annually. And that is where some of the issues of funding was supposed to be done, where we're supposed to be able to meet, be coherent, and be on the same page. But the NRM, I think for them it's more by choice, because they don't suffer the financial depravity which we do as other political players, but it's only SEC which meets. And then when NRM is meeting, now they're meeting in State House. Now this is now additional expense. UPC, when it was in government, never met in State House. That one I can say openly. We never met in State House. You have to separate the issue of a political party and the issue of the government. So now, every now you hear caucus going to State House, you hear this meeting going to State House, surely. When they lose State House, where are they going to go? Are they going to meet under a tree or something?
Honorable Chinobi.
Yeah.
You've had the submission of Honorable Jimmy
Of course it, yeah.
Who thinks the political parties we are talking about are actually being undermined by you, the ruling party. He seems to agree with people who say when you're assessing political parties in Uganda, the NRM needs to look at itself in the mirror.
No, first of all, I want to agree with him, as I said right from the beginning, that I think as a country, maybe we're not ready for parties by conduct. He knows that frustration of opposition was started by the parent party, which started our elections in the 60s. He knows how the opposition was swallowed up. They were merged up, and by the 1969, I think towards that time, we had a single party state.
No, so we've never had a single party state.
History can...
That one we can discuss. The closest we came to a single party state is what they call Statutory Instrument 233 of 1969, which was issued when the president was shot in Lugogo at the end of the UPC Delegates Conference. And there was a lot of move there asking for one party state. We had the late Julius Nyerere attended that Delegates Conference, and the late Kenneth Kaunda, who were also urging for one party state. But where I can tell you that it didn't happen, the 1980 election was held on the 1967 Constitution without amendment. So, parties were never outlawed.
We don't have to go into the law. We are going into the practice, because you just said, wait a minute, in Ndugakena you said that the NRM has got very good writings, but the conduct is different. Well, let's agree that it didn't happen because you never had time. Because after 69, 2 years later, Amin threw you out. If that situation had continued after 69, if Amin had not terminated the life of the UPC government, possibly it could have been different, because all the players and friends were already urging him to go to a single state. But the point was not the point was a de facto situation that I think right from the beginning, the political culture of what we used to do and the way it happened undermined the performance of parties when we came in. Remember that even when we came in, whereas many of the players had belonged to parties, there was a very strong sentiment to move away from parties for quite some time. It was actually more of organized pressures afterwards that parties using DP and maybe UPC and others pushed through to abandon the multi-party politics. We created a healing period and said after this period we shall go to parties, provided a referendum. Reluctantly, even the NRM supported the referendum. So I want to submit that parties in Africa are built on a very wrong foundation, including my own party.
All right.
Our party is a mass party.
Just hold on. we need to go for a short break. When we return, I'll allow you to build your point from there and then get the response from Honorable Jimmy Akena. Now, stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. Our discussion will continue after this break. Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Live of Radio 1 FM 90. We are looking at the health of our political parties in Uganda and whether they are providing us the leadership that we deserve. The guest, Honorable James Kinobe from the NRM party, Honorable Jimmy Akena, President of the Uganda People's Congress. Before going for the break, Honorable Kinobe, you're concluding a point.
So I was concluding that the perceived marginalizing of parties is a conceptual phenomenon, because as I was submitting, where parties function, you should have a distinction between the masses and the lady and the leaders. But because of the past role of parties in the past, we try to come in with a way of protecting maybe the masses. And that's why we had thought we could have an all-inclusive program. Remember, we had the 10-point program where everybody could see himself or herself in the principles of governance and so on. We introduced the participatory democracy and so on. So these are things that usher in to the stage where he's mentioning of very strong personalities. It is true that when parties lose government, just like the way UPC lost government, definitely disintegrated now to where it is today. Because you have a very thin line between the individuals who are within power, who are within governance, and their party structures where they originate from. Even individuals, just look at members of parliament when you're an MP today and the following day when you've lost your seat, you become almost irrelevant in the community. So these are factors that cannot be cured until maybe we graduate to real party political practice like what is in CCM. For example, how does one become a candidate in the NRM? It's not about your commitment, it's not about your loyalty, it's not about anything. You just say, I'm NRM, and we say, yes, you are NRM. The following day, you say, I'm not NRM. You go to NOP, they welcome you, they receive you, give you a slot, you stand. Then the other day, you're in UPC. So people float as if there's no ideological basis. The question is, why would you have been in NRM in the first place, which distinguishes it from UPC or any other than a political ambition? In the city, when you get to know that everybody is opposed to NRM, then you'll never support NRM even when you believe in it, because you think that the people in the urban areas will not vote for you. So the politics has gone around strong personalities and strong reasons other than leadership aspects we're talking about. And this is likely to be the trend for some time until we get ushered into real political parties, how they work, the considerations why they should fight for power. But now it's business.
Honorable Jimmy Akena. Well, you've had the response of Honorable James Kinobe. You wanted to jump in as he was submitting.
I
you seem
decided
to disagree with him.
I disagree strongly. You see, it is what NRM has used to blackmail political parties and to throw all sorts of dirt on political parties. The issues, parties, violence. Which violence has our parties been involved in? But if you look at NRM, historically, I don't think there's been a war in the sub-region where they have not been involved for the last 40 years.
We are told there were political parties had sectarianism of religion, tribe.
We don't have sectarianism today. We have a lot of sectarianism which is being protected. You have issues which have been raised about offices, how people are holding offices and the like. Who can talk about it? Now, anti-sectarian law, if the problem of Uganda was sectarianism, which was a big issue, sectarianism, how many people have been convicted for being sectarian? It's been in the law books. How many people? Is it really a law which has worked? Has it helped? Has it made a difference? It was the uses to blame particular individuals and to hold people what we have been, as UPC for example, we have been blamed for everything. We've been called dictators, we've been called all sorts of issues, corrupt. But we've seen bigger corruption today than has ever been before. So all of this has been excuse to blame others and to create an avenue for NRM to dominate the political sphere. So I don't agree that this whatever, because in any society you're going to have differences. It's just a question of if we agree on the rules, it is okay to have opposing teams and whatever, but as long as you agree on the rules, That is what sports is basically about. It's playing according to the rules.
But some
Where you're
people-
in competition, serious competition, but there are rules which are followed.
Some people will say that you in political parties have also done certain things which are suicidal. For instance, you accepted to work with the NRM, so they have swallowed some of your members. DP accepted to work with the NRM. We saw the confusion that was in the delegates conference and the things that were happening there, and the fingers were being pointed at the party leadership, saying they went into an alliance with the NRM. So some of the problems the political parties are facing have actually come out of, it's what they would call self-infliction. People will not trust you because they think you're working with the NRM.
For me, it has been the situation which I found. My first election was in 2006. Of course, the campaign started in 2005. At that time, Lera municipality had 41 IDP camps. 41. And this is an urban center. What was going on, which was happening amongst those IDPs, especially the female, the young ladies, there was, I would call almost like a systematic abuse in order for people to survive what they were going through. My first issue was, how do we end these camps? Which caused the first meeting we had, actually, it took me to Garamba to meet Konya. Thereafter, I went to meet Museveni. And it was, how do we get out of this situation? And get out of that situation, whoever it meant talking to, we will talk to. Now, how to move the politics from where it was? I want to be able to sit, and what I've tried to do in IPOD, I have been able to speak my mind, maintain my position, but be able to do it on a round table. Very often here now, in politics in Uganda, it is, if I don't agree with you, I should not even be seen in the same room. In the same room with you. I don't have a problem being in the same room. I don't have a problem sitting on the same table. Let us argue our positions. But we should not be hindered or unrealistic hurdles put in the way of others in order to benefit NRM, which is already benefiting from using the state structures, state resources, and using those ones to manipulate the politics. No, there I disagree. I disagree strongly.
All right. And one other thing that Honorable Kinowe raised was the issue of ideology. Political parties being formed just for the sake of, targeting certain things. Like he said, some people are saying as long as we have 2 or 3 MPs in parliament, we have an opportunity to actually get some money from the state coffers. And it pays to be in the opposition and other key positions.
In addition, I can add on one other point. The political landscape is so structured that there are those who may want to work with Museveni and those anti. So people just speculate and say, if I say anything from Museveni this time around here, I'll lose. And they go in simply because of that. I salute Honorable Jimmy because at some point we had a working cooperation, which was really also very helpful. Talking about state resources, we also used to access some of those out of that partnership. Though,
No.
Let me finish my point.
But
Let me finish my
before I finish.
I think one of the biggest...
No, I was just adding in so that you use the same opportunity to talk about both of them.
I think one of the biggest problems with political party cooperation and even the alliances you are talking about is that they are not structured.
No, you see,
members of these political parties
when you work with me,
members of these political parties do not know what is in there.
When you work with us and there's some delivery on a program, facilitation is normal. It's very, very normal whether you're an institution, because for example, we agree that maybe in this area and this activity, you was talking about of ending the war.
So you want to say
partner, and when it's facilitated, I don't think he went on with his own money to wherever he was going.
So you want
that was the partnership, which has now collapsed. I don't know what the reasons could be now.
UPC would receive money over and above
facilitation,
over and above what it is guaranteed in the constitution.
No.
For me, it was nothing about facilitation. Mine was a big picture of how do I get my people out of the camps and back into a productive sector to be able to live their lives.
How did your relationship with the NRM help
that had nothing to do with facilitation. Now, where you mix up the issue of entitlement for political parties which have representation in parliament, for that to be a gift from NRM, that is not the case, right? If it is legislated, which is in the law, that is not a gift of NRM. That is a legal arrangement which is put in place. So I disagree on this issue of saying that it is for facilitation and benefiting whatever. You see, part of the problem which we face is that destruction of the institutions has put pressure on the Member of Parliament to do things which are beyond the role of a Member of Parliament. Right? I can tell you, I think it's about 85% of Members of Parliament have ambulances. They run an ambulance service. Is that a role for a Member of Parliament? And you find somebody is really being squeezed to maintain these things, and they're doing all sorts of things which they're not supposed to do. That is part of the broken system. That is why now you hear people complaining, Parliament emoluments are so high, but what a Member of Parliament goes through and what they're supposed, what they perceived to be able, what they're supposed to do, they are behaving like mini Musevenis. Because there are things which Museveni does as president. They say Museveni has given. No, that is the president of Uganda which has given. You know, these gifts which the president is giving. It's as if he's speaking from his pocket or from his farm. He's not. He's speaking from taxpayers' money, which comes together with the office. So, if you're given something by the president of the republic, it is different from the individual called Museveni or the party called NRM. If it comes from the NRM coffers, it is different. If it comes from the government coffers, it is different. And those are things which people need to really understand. Because now people think that the government money, that is NRM money. It is not NRM money. Even if NRM is the party in government, that is not NRM money. That is money belonging to the people of Uganda. The government belongs to the people of Uganda. Those offices belong to the people of Uganda. You will come in that office, you will leave. Other people will take over that office. That office continues to serve the people of Uganda. So we need to separate that. And that's something which NRM fails to do. They think that everything is theirs. It's not. This is my country. The government is the Uganda government, and it will be a Uganda government. Whether there's NRM or not, Uganda government will be there.
You see, earlier on as we were discussing, there was an aspect of undermining parties. But now he's saying the NRM government, by creating an aura of supporting democracy and supporting the opposition to become equally strong like you, is not positive. We had a government in place which would only reward you by crossing from the other party to another one. But this, don't you think this is should be credited to the NRM, that during their governance, there is that proportionate funding that is extended to parties to build their strength, even if it means using that money from the government where we are the ones in leadership, even to overthrow it. I think that could be credited.
But even for me, the formula used...
Well, let's go to the principle.
The formula even used for sharing this money is also,
let's go to the
in
principle.
my opinion, a little bit
Let's go to the principle. In a situation where a winner takes it all, we have all the numbers, you can even legislate against even a single shilling going to the opposition. We do affirmative, and the money is apportioned. Now the discussion, which I entirely support, is how to use the money, but not the fact that is iPod, which was created by a very good reason after the Constitutional Review Commission, that we need to have parties to engage. There are times when you really need to constructive engagements between players. Today you're in government, the other day you may not be in government.
The constitutional body which you have neglected for quite some time is the National Consultative Forum. iPod has just been an NGO.
iPod is because it negotiated for some of the funding. But the principle is that whether you're in government or not, there should be recognition of a political party and what it does and the role it plays. Then the formula comes around members of parliament. I think that was the most acceptable then. Otherwise, I remember there were some advocates saying that it's not only by MPs. Let's look even at lower local governments or even being registered, as, which I don't have a problem with. What I'm only saying is that it should be commendable that when you have a sitting government, it can think of a discussion on what to give and discuss the formula. But there are governments here which in the past which would only reward you by denouncing your former party and joining a ruling party.
You wanted to respond?
You see, this is where we distort history and we come with our own stories. Under UPC, there was a leader of opposition. That office existed, and that office was facilitated. Then the issue of public accounts, that has been there from before. Before NRM existed as a party, we had public accounts, we had leader of opposition. In the 60s, it was Latim who was the last leader of opposition, and by the time Amin overthrew, he remained leader of opposition. Amin was the DP leader in the House. So, where you mix up these institutions of parliament, which exist even in other countries, where you have that level of facilitation, that should not be anything or whatever. What came about is, under the movement system, NRM was a state-funded political party. And the rest of us, you could only compete as an individual without an institution.
But a UPC individual?
UPC individual
yes,
versus
an NRM individual and during the movement party. During the movement politics in Uganda, it was individuals belonging to parties, but
state-funded political entity. Where they say now, at the end of that thing, Museveni says, we defeated the parties. Now, you defeated if you say it was individuals. How can you defeat when you say it's individuals competing? No. It was NRM competing, the rest as us individuals. NRM versus individuals. Now there you will win.
Honorable Jimmy Akena seems to suggest that without state funding...
No, not only state funding. What I tried to submit, and I still strongly say that when you in power, even as an opposition, the leverage of Ndugu Akena has made one of his very prominent members of Uganda's cabinet and wielding a lot of power and influence. The moment you lose that alliance and doesn't work out, definitely some portion of the influence will be lost. So there's no doubt about it that once you lose power, your leverage into influencing many things goes. That's why even when you see members of parliament who used to be introduced once you're no longer an MP, you don't even get introduced, people don't talk about you, and you feel so bad. So there's no doubt, if we lose political power, a bigger clout of what we are definitely will be now occupied by those who will be replacing us. It's a natural phenomenon.
All right.
There is no doubt about it.
We have comments, feedback coming in from the listeners. Kenneth, you are telling Honorable Akena that people don't trust you because they think you work with NRM. Which people? For your information, most people trust the NRM. That's why it is a mass party. As a view there of a listener, unfortunately, didn't leave a comment behind. Charles, listening in from the UK. You know what, Kenneth? It is so sad that political parties are a business of murder. How sad. And then we have another comment here. Good evening, Spectrum. Thanks for the show. My comments on the issues at hand. Can Honorable Akena tell Uganda UPC is still opposition and has an agenda of taking over from NRM when your own people are in the same bed with the NRM government as a minister? And don't you think joining the presidential race and losing in 2026, NRM is going to use your party UPC likened to a sugarcane being used as a walking stick? Honorable Chinobe, one of the conditions for NRM candidates expressing interest is the commitment not to contest after falling out in the primaries. Yet we continue to see a lot of gaps in the ongoing grassroots structure elections. How prepared is NRM handling incompetencies in your EC without seeing what happened recently in Kisoro woman MP race by elections, where the aggrieved candidate came out as an independent and won? That's a comment from Kamugo Fred Keter, listening in from Kira municipality. If you can't convince your own wife to be on the same side with you like you convince her to be your wife, how do you tell us that us on the table you sit on, how do you tell us the table you sit on with your opponent leaders is round? NRM has not hired your say, NRM has not tried you're saying much corruption, because now more coverage and awareness, unlike in the 60s, but more corruption than the UPC time. That's Derek listening in from Chira. And then last but not least, for NRM, you have failed on political awareness. We have ignorant electorates who don't know the qualities of leaders they vote for, except NRM little civic education. That's Derek listening in from Chireka. Well, that's the feedback we're getting from the listeners, and can respond to them. I'll begin with you, Honorable Jimmy Akena.
Yes, thank you, and thank the listeners who have sent their comments in. I want to clarify on one issue. Every election I have contested, I have contested against an NRM candidate. Every election. 2006, I stood against Sam Ingola, who was the regional vice chair of NRM.
And it took people, it left people asking, what kind of cooperation were you in with NRM?
You see, now that is where people mix things up. For me, I'm very clear on what I'm doing. Election, I am competing as UPC. Where I see a UPC, I'll support that UPC. I don't care who is there, who's supporting that one. My UPC candidate is my candidate, right? I stand against whatever. But I am ready to sit on the table. Competing against you does not mean I have to hate you or whatever, and does not mean that we cannot sit after the election. But during the election, every election, I have competed against NRM. Every election, Honorable Betty has competed against NRM. There has been NRM. At this moment,
then you oppose the idea of conditioning state funding to political parties on such arrangements.
No,
Sitting on the table.
No. Yes, you see, sitting on the table means also I have a right not to sit on the table.
Okay.
talking means I also have the right not to talk. So I cannot be compelled to talk. I cannot be compelled to sit on a table. I must come willingly, which I've been able to do, which I've demonstrated. I'm ready to discuss the future of Uganda across all political lines, but it does not mean I have to compromise my position. And when it comes to election, I will stand as UPC and I'll support UPC candidates. So right now, the whole fracas which has been going on in Lira City, or what has been going up and down, 2 ministers competing for the same seat. One on UPC ticket, one on NRM
But
ticket.
both ministers in the NRM government.
No, in the government of Uganda. Please, let's understand ourselves. Well, let's understand ourselves. It's being run by NRM, but it's a government of Uganda.
Both the
It's
UPC
the government
candidate
of
and the NRM
Uganda.
candidate are both ministers in the NRM government of Uganda. Right?
No, in the government of Uganda, run by NRM. There's a difference.
Okay.
So what is wrong with that?
Nothing wrong. We're not saying it's wrong. We're
Yes,
just
so
stating
we're
facts.
allowed to compete.
Absolutely. There's no problem with that.
And if it means, and I've been very clear that I'm keeping my candidate. All through they've tried to get me to withdraw my candidate. I'm keeping my candidate. So what?
Shouldn't Ugandans credit the NRM for all that?
No.
Whoever takes it all used to be part of the problem.
Please, don't. You see, that is where we deceive ourselves. I mentioned Latim was leader of opposition in parliament. Now, who took all? Who took all? If there's leader of opposition.
Can you mention any single leader of the opposition who was appointed in a cabinet position or in any top leadership position during the time of UPC then? Just the way it is that wife to a president of a party is a senior minister
listen to
in the
this
NRM
gentleman here.
government.
40 years. We are now in the 38th, is it 38th, 39th year. The second UPC government was 4.5 years. The first UPC government was what, 8 years? Now, can you see when you try to run this direct comparison, now look what NRM has done, look at NRM. If I want to break down what NRM has failed to do, I can show you what NRM has failed to do. I'll go on the ground and show you what has failed to do.
As long as you mentioned what you have been able to do.
Last week I was in Busheji for Heroes Day, UPC Heroes Day, May 27th. Of the 15 government-aided schools in Bushenyi, 15 government-aided secondary schools in Bushenyi, 9 were built by UPC. Up to today, 40 years later, 9 of those 15 were built by UPC. Now, the UPC legacy continues to work. The NRM legacy is poverty, it is destruction of people, destruction of the education system. I'm sure, I don't know what school you went to, but I'm almost certain you are not sending your schools to those children to the same school. You can't. They've killed the education system. People are now rushing for these private, whatever, even hospitals. I was born in Mulago. The other day we're having people crying about what the condition of Mulago. They have destroyed institutions. So that is a big difference. Now, if you want to give accolades for whatever has been done, fine, you can claim whatever you want to claim. But the reality is UPC is UPC. UPC is going to field candidates. In this election, we've got a presidential candidate, we've got members of parliament, and we're going to compete against whoever. But that does not mean that after that one, we cannot look at the future of Uganda. I'll look at the future of Uganda. But I remain UPC, and I'll compete. And I'll not spare. On where you have failed, please, in this election, be ready. I am going to expose everything on where I feel NRM has failed to deliver for the people of Uganda.
I entirely agree with him because the duty to amplify what I've done is mine. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in the opposition. The duty of the opposition is only to mention what I have failed to do. If I promise 100 things, fail 2, he always going to sing about the 2. It's not his duty to mention the 98. Therefore, it's upon the NRM cadres for them to sing what we've been able to do. And this is not a disclaimer that we haven't failed in some areas. Definitely, there are areas we've done very well.
Okay.
There are areas where we've had failures. There are areas where we have failures and explanations why we have failed. Because the problem is that they call them failures. For us, we call them challenges.
All right.
Whenever you try to sort out something, definitely every action has got a reaction. So it's our duty as cadres of the NRM to say, yes, here we have a credit, here we've not done well, here we need to improve, and so on.
All right.
And
I'm afraid time is not on our side. We have to bring this discussion to an end.
there was
There will always be another opportunity. Honorable Chilobe.
well, the issue of independence standing, the issue of independence is still a challenge.
Okay.
But we have made safeguards. We are going to have a memorandum of understanding. We are going to talk to our candidates.
All right.
Because it undermines the very spirit of working together as the NRM candidates.
All right.
And we shall sort it out next time when we come to discuss.
Tomorrow,
we
same
shall-
time, another topic will be on the air. We'll be focusing on the State of the Nation address, which will be made by President Yoweri Museveni tomorrow. And that will be be a discussion here on Spectrum. But up next, we have the news in English with Miss Josephine Dagano. Thereafter, we'll have the Soul Train with PP Jr.